Andrei Chikatilo was born in 1936 in a small, poverty-stricken Ukrainian village under the Soviet Union. His childhood was shaped by extreme scarcity, hunger, and the shadow of war, with stories of cannibalism haunting his family's memories. Socially awkward and bullied as a boy, Chikatilo struggled to connect with others and developed deep emotional scars. He became a teacher, but was repeatedly dismissed for inappropriate behavior and his inability to relate to colleagues and students. In the 1970s and 80s, the Soviet Union was rocked by a wave of brutal murders, targeting children and young women. Victims were found in forests and near train stations, many suffering unspeakable violence and mutilation. The killings shocked communities and baffled investigators, especially as Soviet authorities publicly denied the possibility of a serial killer operating within their society. Chikatilo's methods grew more violent over time, often luring victims with promises of food or gifts. Between 1978 and 1990, he was responsible for at least 52 murders, though the true number may be higher. Chikatilo was finally caught in 1990 after years of failed investigations and public fear. His trial became a national spectacle. Chikatilo sat in a metal cage, acting erratic and unpredictable as the horrifying details of his crimes emerged. In 1992, he was convicted of 52 murders and sentenced to death. He spent 2 years on death row before being executed by a single gunshot in 1994. The case of Andrei Chikatilo left a permanent stain on Soviet and Russian history, a chilling reminder of what can happen in the darkest corners of society. Mary Ann Cotton was born in 1832 in a small coal mining village in northeast England. Her early life was marked by hardship and the harsh realities of the Victorian working class. Orphaned by her father's tragic death in a mining accident, she learned early on how to survive in a world that offered little mercy to the poor. As a young woman, Mary Ann married and started a family, but tragedy seemed to follow her. Husband after husband, along with many of her children and relatives, died mysteriously, usually after complaining of severe stomach pains. As the bodies piled up, Mary Ann moved frequently, often remarrying quickly and collecting life insurance payouts after each death. She presented herself as a caring wife and mother, but behind closed doors, she administered lethal doses of arsenic to her victims. Investigators later suspected she was responsible for at least 21 deaths over 2 decades. Many believed the real number could be higher, as patterns emerged in the towns she left behind. Yet, in Victorian England, with limited forensic knowledge and high death rates from illness, her crimes went undetected for years. Only when a suspicious doctor tested the body of her final victim, her stepson, for poison did the truth finally begin to surface. Mary Ann was arrested in 1872, and the shocking confessions and evidence of poisoning captivated the nation. During her sensational trial, the extent of her cold strategy and calculated murders was revealed to the public. She was quickly found guilty and sentenced to death by hanging. On March 24, 1873, Mary Ann Cotton was executed before a crowd at Durham Jail, becoming one of Britain's earliest and deadliest known female serial killers. Her chilling legacy offers a dark glimpse into the dangers that once lurked behind the facade of respectability in Victorian society. Gary Ridgway was born in 1949 in Salt Lake City, Utah, and grew up near Seattle, Washington. His childhood was troubled by family conflict, and he struggled with social isolation and academic difficulties. As a teenager, he developed troubling fascinations, but outwardly seemed to settle into adult life, marrying multiple times and finding steady work as a truck painter. During the 1980s and 1990s, Seattle was gripped by fear as young women began to vanish, many of them sex workers and runaways. Dozens of bodies were found along the Green River and in nearby woods and ravines, often left in remote locations. Ridgway targeted vulnerable women, luring them with offers of money or rides, and then murdering them before disposing of the remains. His methods were cold and calculated, allowing him to evade suspicion for years. police launched one of the largest investigations in American history, interviewing Ridgway several times but lacking the evidence to charge him. As the years passed, the body count grew, and the Green River Killer became an infamous figure, causing widespread fear in the community and frustration for law enforcement. It wasn't until 2001, with advancements in DNA technology, that detectives linked Ridgway to several victims. Confronted with the evidence, he confessed to murdering 49 women, making him the most prolific convicted serial killer in United States history. In 2003, Ridgway pleaded guilty to these murders, escaping the death penalty in exchange for his cooperation in identifying additional victims. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole, where he remains to this day. The case of Gary Ridgway is a chilling reminder of how evil can hide in plain sight, and how many vulnerable lives can be lost before a killer is finally brought to justice. Gilles de Rais was born in 1405 into a wealthy and noble family in Brittany, France. As a young man, he became a celebrated knight and military leader, fighting alongside Joan of Arc during the 100 Years' War. Renowned for his bravery and stature, Gilles inherited vast lands and fortune, making him one of the most powerful men in France. But after the war, his life took a dark and disturbing turn. In the years that followed, reports of missing children began to grow in the provinces where Gilles held his estates. Under the cover of his castles, Gilles lured in dozens, and possibly hundreds, of peasant boys. Many were never seen again. Witnesses and later investigations revealed horrific acts of violence and abuse committed against these children. Gilles squandered his fortune on extravagant projects and occult rituals, believing he could gain power by making pacts with dark forces. For years, his crimes went unpunished, shielded by his social status and the fear he inspired among his subjects. Eventually, rumors became impossible to ignore. In 1440, Gilles de Rais was arrested and put on trial. The evidence and confessions during his trial shocked both church and state, revealing a chilling pattern of sadistic murders and occult practices. Gilles was convicted of numerous counts of murder and heresy. On October 26, 1440, he was executed by hanging and burning. His story remains one of the earliest and most horrifying cases of serial murder in European history, a striking example of how great power and privilege can hide inconceivable evil. John Wayne Gacy was born in 1942 in Chicago, Illinois, the son of a working-class family marked by a strict and often abusive father. Despite a troubled childhood, Gacy grew up to become a seemingly upstanding member of his community. He started successful businesses, got involved in local politics, and threw lavish neighborhood parties, where he often entertained children dressed as Pogo the Clown. To the outside world, Gacy was friendly and trustworthy. However, beneath this mask of respectability hid unspeakable darkness. Beginning in the early 1970s, young men and teenage boys started disappearing in the Chicago area. Gacy lured his victims with promises of work, money, or simply the lure of friendship, bringing them to his suburban home. There, he would torture and murder them, ultimately hiding the bodies in the crawlspace beneath his house or disposing of them in nearby rivers. The disappearances alarmed families and frustrated police, who struggled to connect the cases. Gacy's double life allowed him to evade suspicion for years. By the time the truth came to light, Gacy had murdered at least 33 young men and boys, making him one of America's most notorious serial killers. The sheer horror of his crimes and the way he hid them in plain sight shocked the nation and changed how communities viewed even their most involved neighbors. Gacy was arrested in December 1978 after police discovered human remains on his property. The subsequent investigation uncovered the full, horrifying scale of his crimes. He was tried and swiftly convicted for the murders, with the evidence against him being overwhelming. After more than a decade on death row, John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection in 1994. His chilling story remains a grim warning about the monsters that can lurk beneath a veneer of normalcy. Elizabeth Bathory was born in 1560 into one of the most powerful noble families in Hungary. Raised in privilege and luxury, she was highly educated and became fluent in several languages. She married a prominent soldier and moved into the vast, imposing Szeged castle. From her position of wealth and authority, Elizabeth held immense sway over the peasants and servants in her estate, a power that would eventually take a sinister turn. Over the years, rumors began to swirl about strange disappearances and unexplained deaths among the young girls who served in Bathory's castle. Witness accounts and later investigations accused her of torturing, abusing, and murdering dozens, possibly hundreds, of young women. Legend claims that she even bathed in the blood of her victims, believing it would preserve her youth and beauty, earning her the infamous nickname, the Blood Countess. Whether or not all these tales are true, the atmosphere of fear and horror that surrounded her estate was undeniable, and villagers lived in terror as more innocents vanished behind castle walls. In 1610, after mounting complaints from the local nobility, an official investigation was launched. Elizabeth Bathory was arrested, and the grisly evidence discovered inside her castle stunned the Hungarian court. Though never formally tried due to her noble status, she was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment, walled up in a small set of rooms within her own castle. She spent her final years in isolation, dying in 1614. The story of Elizabeth Bathory has since become the stuff of dark legend, as both a historical mystery and a warning about the depths of cruelty possible when unchecked power meets obsession. The Zodiac Killer emerged in the late 1960s in Northern California, instantly striking fear into the hearts of communities around San Francisco and the Bay Area. Little is known of the killer's true identity. He taunted the police and press with cryptic letters, mysterious ciphers, and threatening phone calls. In his notes, the Zodiac claimed responsibility for a series of brutal attacks on young couples and a cab driver, and he bragged about murders that were never conclusively linked to his reign of terror. His chilling coded messages were signed with a symbol resembling a crosshairs, forever searing his chosen name into American crime history. The Zodiac's attacks were sudden and unpredictable. He shot and stabbed his victims in secluded spots, often surprising them late at night. After some of his crimes, he phoned the police himself to brag about what he had done, and even provided details only the real killer could know. What truly separated the Zodiac from other murderers was his sadistic love of publicity. He sent dozens of letters to newspapers, including bizarre threats, mocking puzzles, and ominous details, daring the public and police to stop him. His ciphers left both amateur and professional code breakers stumped for decades, fueling national obsession and endless theories. The killer claimed to have murdered as many as 37 people, but authorities officially linked him to at least 5 deaths, leaving many to wonder about the true scope of his crimes. Despite massive investigations, dozens of suspects, and countless hours spent sifting through clues, the Zodiac Killer was never caught. He simply vanished from the public eye in the early 1970s, and his case remains one of America's most mystifying and disturbing unsolved mysteries. The legend of the Zodiac endures, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most dangerous criminals are the ones who vanish without a trace. Jack the Ripper is one of history's most infamous and mysterious serial killers. His crimes took place in 1888 in the dark, foggy alleys of London's Whitechapel district, a crime-ridden neighborhood plagued by poverty and overcrowding. The true identity of the Ripper remains unknown to this day. What is known is that he targeted vulnerable women, mostly impoverished prostitutes, leaving a trail of terror that gripped the city and drew the world's attention. Between August and November of 1888, Jack the Ripper brutally murdered at least 5 women, though some believe the real number could be higher. Each of his attacks was marked by shocking violence and disturbing mutilation, fueling rumors of surgical skill and ritualistic intent. The Ripper taunted both police and the public, sending letters signed with his chilling nickname, and details only the real killer could know. Londoners lived in constant fear as the newspapers sensationalized each new murder, and would-be detectives scoured the city for clues. The police interviewed hundreds of suspects and chased countless leads, but every investigation ended in frustration. Despite massive efforts from law enforcement and the public, Jack the Ripper was never caught or identified. He vanished just as suddenly as he had appeared, leaving behind a legacy of fear and fascination. His gruesome crimes inspired countless books, theories, and movies, ensuring that the legend of Jack the Ripper endures to this day. A haunting reminder of evil that can strike from the shadows and never be brought to justice. Pedro Alonso Lopez was born in 1948 in Colombia, into a life marked by poverty and violence. His childhood was shaped by abandonment, abuse, and the constant struggle to survive on the streets after losing his father and being rejected by his mother. Lopez's early years were filled with deprivation and trauma, driving him into a life of crime from a young age. In the 1970s and early 1980s, Lopez became infamous across South America for an unimaginable series of crimes. He traveled extensively through Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, targeting young girls in rural villages and towns. Lopez lured his victims with promises of gifts or work, then abducted, assaulted, and murdered them. Authorities struggled to uncover the truth as children kept disappearing, often from the poorest and most overlooked communities. When Lopez was finally captured in Ecuador in 1980, he confessed to killing over 300 young girls, a claim later supported by the discovery of mass graves in several locations. Dubbed the Monster of the Andes, his confessions and the horrifying details of his crimes shocked even the most hardened investigators. He claimed he was motivated by hatred born from his own traumatic past, showing little remorse during interviews. Lopez was convicted in Ecuador in 1980 and sentenced to just 16 years in prison, the maximum under the country's laws at the time. After serving 14 years, he was released and deported to Colombia, where he was briefly institutionalized but eventually disappeared once again. To this day, his true whereabouts remain uncertain, and the real number of his victims may never be fully known. Pedro Alonso Lopez's story remains one of the darkest and most chilling examples of serial murder in global history, a case that continues to haunt South America and the world. Theodore Bundy, known to the world as Ted Bundy, was born in 1946 in Burlington, Vermont, and raised in a seemingly normal American household. Intelligent, charming, and good-looking, Bundy blended easily into society and even studied psychology at university. To friends and family, he appeared ambitious and polite. Beneath this facade, however, lay a deeply disturbed mind hiding dark obsessions that would eventually shock the entire country. In the 1970s, young women across several states began to disappear under mysterious circumstances. Bundy targeted college-aged women, often approaching them in public places and pretending to need help, using his charm and good looks to gain their trust before attacking. Over the years, Bundy confessed to the murders of more than 30 women, though experts believe the real number may be higher. His crimes spanned Washington, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, and Florida. Bundy's ability to evade law enforcement frustrated investigators and terrified communities. He escaped from custody twice, continuing his spree before finally being captured for good in 1978. The brutality of his crimes, along with his manipulative courtroom persona, drew massive media attention and turned his trials into a national spectacle. After several years of legal proceedings and appeals, Bundy was convicted of multiple murders and sentenced to death. He spent nearly a decade on death row, where he continued to toy with investigators and the media, offering confessions in exchange for delayed execution. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison. His chilling legacy remains one of the most infamous in American criminal history, a disturbing reminder of how evil can disguise itself behind a mask of normalcy.